Hello everyone, this is Heroes Trivia, and today we're continuing the reign of Cao Rui Let's Talk Lore series with episode 2, titled The Second Emperor of Wei. Now last time we ended as Cao Rui's birth mother, Lady Jin, was sentenced to death instead of being made the first empress of Wei, and as collateral damage, Cao Rui also lost his title as the Duke of Qi, and his chances of becoming the crown prince took a big hit. Fortunately, Cao Rui was surrounded by the right people, as his tutors and house guests kept him on the straight and narrow, as Cao Rui could not afford to make any mistakes, as any lapse in judgment could be exploited by his father Cao Pi as the reason to banish him for good. Luckily, Cao Pi was also unsure what to do about Cao Rui, as while he was dead set on killing Lady Jin to make Guo Nuwang his empress, he was much less certain about the crown prince position, especially as he was getting pressure from the imperial court to follow the tradition of naming the eldest son as heir. So from time to time, Cao Pi would question those close to Cao Rui to inquire about Cao Rui's state of mind, as Cao Pi worried that Cao Rui would carry a grudge for the death of his birth mother. And one person that Cao Pi would repeatedly ask would be Wei Zhen, who had always been particularly close to Cao Rui. Now Wei Zhen was the son of Wei Zi, who was Cao Cao's first benefactor. Back in 189, when Cao Cao first fled the capital and returned home seeking to recruit his first army against Dong Zhuo, his corrupt and very wealthy father turned him down as he moved the rest of the family to retire in the princedom of Langya. Left with no money to recruit an army, Cao Cao's story almost ended before it even started. But fortunately, while his own father would not believe in him, Cao Cao found a believer in another local gentry named Wei Zi, who provided enough funds to help Cao Cao recruit 5,000 men to form his first army. Sadly, during Cao Cao's first battle in Xinyang, Cao Cao's inexperienced force would run up against one of Dong Zhuo's best generals in Xu Rong, as Cao Cao's army was decimated, with Wei Zi fighting to his death as well. So it's no surprise that from that point on, Cao Cao would treat Wei Zi's surviving son, Wei Zhen, extremely well. And by the time of Cao Pi's reign, Wei Zhen would become one of Cao Pi's 4 attendants. Yet despite this closeness with the Cao clan, Wei Zhen knew his place and stayed largely neutral in regards to sensitive decisions such as naming the crown prince. So every time Cao Pi asked him about Cao Rui, Wei Zhen would only state that Cao Rui was a smart kid and say nothing more. And according to a slightly less reliable source, the event that changed Cao Pi's mind on the matter turned out to be a hunt, as during one particular hunt with Cao Rui, Cao Pi came across a pair of deer. Cao Pi took aim at one of them and easily found his mark. Riding up close, Cao Pi noticed that the pair of deer was a mother and her child, and that his arrow had struck and killed the mother. Seeing that the young buck was staying next to his fallen mother, Cao Pi ordered Cao Rui to finish the job. But Cao Rui refused as he broke out in tears, stating that he did not have the heart to kill the child after seeing the mother's death. And it was this moment that broke down Cao Pi's heart as he made up his mind to keep Cao Rui as his heir. But whether or not this story is true, what we know from historical documents is that by March of 222, roughly 9 months after sentencing Lady Jin to death, Cao Pi finally made up his mind as Cao Rui was promoted from Marquis directly to king, as he became the king of Pingyuan. More importantly, Cao Pi had Empress Guo adopt Cao Rui as her own son, which all but cemented his place as the crown prince. Now, whether or not Cao Rui liked this decision is another question entirely, as his own birth mother's death had a lot to do with Empress Guo's ascension. But disregarding his personal feelings, after a period of time, Cao Rui did start to act like the perfect filial pious son, as he would promptly visit Guo Nuwang's palace every day right after he wakes up and before he retires in the evening to greet and pay his respect to his adopted mother, Empress Guo. And because Empress Guo would not have any child of her own, she adored Cao Rui and treated him like her own. Now, even with Cao Rui's position secured, Cao Pi still did not officially name a crown prince, but he did make every effort to support Cao Rui, as on top of Zeng Cheng, Cao Pi found Cao Rui another teacher in Gao Tanglong, who hailed from a long line of well-respected Confucian scholars. And once Cao Rui turned 18 in 223, Cao Pi secured him a wife in Lady Yu, who hailed from the great Yu gentry clan of Henei, which only farther secured Cao Rui's position at court as the favorite to inherit the throne, even as the crown prince position remained empty. Now, as a side note, along with Lady Yu, Cao Rui also took Lady Mao, who also hailed from Henei, as a concubine at the same time. Even though it was not recorded, it was highly likely that Lady Mao was Lady Yu's personal maid, as taking the personal maid as concubine was a rather common practice. Now, the reason I'm making this seemingly unimportant side note is because it was recorded that Cao Rui was enamored with Lady Mao, as they were said to be inseparable. This, of course, will come into play once Cao Rui is faced with the same problem of naming his own empress, much like his father. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, as it would take until Cao Pi's last day on Earth to officially name Cao Rui as the crown prince. This, of course, had a lot to do with Cao Pi's sudden and unexpected death, as Cao Pi would fall deathly ill on May 16, 226, and die the very next day at just 40 years old. And I firmly believe that while Cao Rui's position as heir was highly likely, Cao Pi was still evaluating him, much like how Cao Cao took 20 years to name an official heir after the death of his eldest son, Cao Ang. But with Cao Pi's sudden death, Cao Rui is thrusted upon the throne as the second emperor of Wei, at just 21 years old. But despite being of age already, Cao Rui will not have independent rule right away, as Cao Pi spent his last day picking not one, not two, but 4 regents to guide Cao Rui's hands, as Cao Zhen, Cao Xiu, Sima Yi, and Chen Qun were picked as co-regents. Now, in our previous Cao Pi lore series, we talked in depth about each of these co-regents and why they were picked, so we will not be repeating ourselves here. Instead, we'll focus on why Cao Pi felt the need to select co-regents at all for his adult heir and son, Cao Rui. And I believe it all boils down to the state of China at the time. Even though the Wei dynasty had usurped the Han, the land was still in turmoil, with resistance factions in every direction. To the west, you had the Shu Han regime, claiming to be a continuation of the Han dynasty, and lives to destroy Wei. To the south, you have Sun Quan, who controlled vast territories and clearly had the ambition to create his own kingdom as well as a challenger to Wei. And even internally speaking, with the sudden death of Cao Pi after a relatively short reign of barely 7 years, there were still many ambitious regional vassals such as the Gongsun clan in the northeast and former Han loyalists who were all eyeing for weakness and opportunity to challenge the Wei dynasty. So in a sense, Cao Pi knew his son would need help right away, especially in terms of military help, which is why 3 of the 4 co-regents were experienced generals, as Chen Qun was the only one that specialized in court affairs. And Cao Pi would be proven correct, as right after his death, Sun Quan will launch 2 campaigns, first against Jiangxia, then Xiangyang. Out west, Chu Ying, the administrator of the Xiping commandery, would rebel against Wei, while Meng Da, the administrator of the Shangyong commandery, would also do the same. Of course, the biggest threat during Cao Rui's reign would eventually be Zhuge Liang's northern expeditions, as the first one will launch just in a few years. But we're once again getting ahead of ourselves as this episode comes to an end here. Next time when we return, we will dissect each of these early challenges of Cao Rui's reign and touch a bit on his personal life. So, as always, hopefully you all have enjoyed this episode enough to hit that like button to help support the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!